Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Before I get into anything, I want to address the elephant in the room, which is I chopped off probably 8 or 9 inches of my hair. I just got it done today and I love it, but I just wanted to address that because yes, obviously I chopped off a bunch of my hair. Very excited about that. But for today's video, we are going to be reading thrillers for a full week. This may be a little bit longer than a week, just so that I can get some books into this video, but we're just gonna say reading thrillers for a week, and I'm really excited because thrillers and mysteries are probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite genre. I did start a book today, and that was A Flicker in the Dark, and I started this while I was at my salon appointment because you're there for hours when you're getting your hair cut and colored. So I did go ahead and start this. I think I got to page 91 or 92 of Flicker in the Dark, and this is my first book by Stacy Willingham, and I did see that her other book I saw on the back of here, it is called All the Dangerous Things, which I feel like I've seen this either in Barnes & Noble or people talking about it, and I really like this book so far, so maybe I'll read another one of her books. This is about years prior to when this is presently taking place. There was actually a serial killer on the loose in this small town in Louisiana, and now it's 20 years later. He was caught, and now it's 20 years later, and the daughter of the man who was caught being the serial killer, she is a psychologist, and it's now the 20-year reunion, and so, you know, she's having some feelings about that. And then also these people start appearing missing again, which is kind of the telltale sign of the killings that happened 20 years prior. So that's basically what this book is about, and I've wanted to read this for such a long time. I've heard such great things. It has a pretty good Goodreads rating. So yeah, this is really good so far. But basically this video is going to be me reading thrillers, kind of pretty much a mini reading vlog. I won't go too into depth for each book, and this will be spoiler free, so if you haven't read any of these books, you can watch this video, but I think it will be fun. I'm also going to read my first Stephen King novel sometime during this thriller reading for a week. I got 2 of his books the other day, and I haven't read any Stephen King. I was a little nervous because obviously he's like a famous horror author, and I do not want to read horror, but there's quite a few books that he has that are, I would consider more of like thriller books. And I did see Haley Pham is now reading a bunch of his books, and so she definitely encouraged me to want to go out and grab some. So yeah, just come along with me as I pretty much scare myself with books for the week. So it is the next day, and I haven't got to read yet today, but I'm about to sit down and hopefully get through a big chunk of the book. I was able to read a few more pages last night, so I am on page 140 now, and I think the book is about like 350 pages, so I'm almost halfway and still really enjoying it. A really good book. Definitely want to figure out what happens. So one thing that I really look for in a good thriller, or what I look for to consider it a really good thriller book, is if I can't figure out the main plot or the main twist or the main, you know, murderer of the book. And I feel like I have a few ideas of who it could be, but I don't know if it's too obvious or if I'm just really reading into it, but they're kind of making it obvious in my opinion. So I really hope that I'm not right, just for the sake of me loving the book, because I don't know, to me a really good mystery thriller means that they really get me, that there's really a twist I didn't see coming. And after reading quite a few thrillers, I feel like it's getting harder and harder to kind of trick me. So when an author can do that, I really appreciate that. And so far I do feel like there is going to be probably a twist at the end that I didn't see coming, but I'm just hoping that I'm not right, because I have like I think 2 people I think it could be who's doing these killings, you know, 20 years later. Her dad's obviously still in prison, he's in prison for life, but you know, these killings are happening again, and this is all in the synopsis, so I'm not giving anything away. But yeah, I have an inkling of like who it may be, and I hope I'm wrong. But to me, that's just a really good way to know if a thriller mystery book is really good, is if they can really get me. was a few days later, or a couple days later, and I finished A Flicker in the Dark, and I just finished it. It was really good. I feel like I need a little bit of time to kind of think about this book, but it was on track to be a 5-star until kind of the very last few chapters where like everything was revealed. I do feel like it was wrapped up a teeny bit fast, and I feel like some of the elements of who it was didn't really like come to a great close. But I think as of right now, I would rate this like a 4 or 4.5 stars, because throughout the whole book I could really picture the scenery, so I thought that was really good, and I just loved the storyline. So right now that's kind of what I am rating it, and it very much was a quick read in the sense of shorter chapters wanting you to get to the next chapter, because like almost every chapter ended on a cliffhanger. I feel like another good thriller author who is really good at doing that is Freida McFadden, and then also Alice Feeney. So it kind of gave me those vibes a little bit, and I really like this, and I'm excited to read my next thriller. I think I'm gonna read, let me grab it. I think I'm gonna read Billy Summers by Stephen King next. I also have Misery by Stephen King that I'm excited to read, because I've seen like bits and pieces of this older movie and sounds really intriguing. But I think I'm gonna start off reading this one, and I'm gonna start it tomorrow because my family and I are going on a road trip tomorrow for about most of the day or half the day, and so I think I'm gonna start that on the road trip. So that's probably gonna be the next clips that you're gonna see. I don't even really know what this one is much about. I haven't read much about it on the back, but just I've heard a few people talk about it, so I'm excited to dive into Stephen King. But I think once I read a little bit more, I will kind of tell you guys what it is more about once I get into it. I'm trying not to get you.
If you want to get views, just put a thumbnail of me on there. All the women.
I made it to my grandparents' house, and I was able to read a little bit of this book on the drive, but not very much. I only got to page like 28 because I was driving quite a bit, so wasn't able to read much. But I wanted to kind of tell you guys what it is about so far, and I did read the back since, and I do remember actually reading the back now or hearing someone else talk about it. But basically this is a guy named Billy Summers, and he is kind of involved in some like vigilante type stuff where he actually kills people, but he only kills bad guys basically. So he's kind of like a good vigilante, and he used to be in the war in Iraq, so he's a sniper, so I'm assuming that's how he kills all the people. And he wants to get out of this kind of lifestyle, and he has one last job, and then I'm assuming this whole book is going to be about his one last job. But so far we're kind of just meeting Billy Summers and then some of the characters that he is involved with, like in this group that he like works for, and that's really it so far. I mean, I'm only on page 28, but I will say so far it's a little bit slow for me, which is a little bit shocking because I don't know, I've never read Stephen King, but I just thought it would captivate me right away, and it hasn't quite yet. But again, I am at the very beginning of it, and it's a pretty long book, like over 500 pages I think, or right at 500 pages, so pretty long book. But I'm gonna read a little bit more tonight, then we do travel back home tomorrow, and hopefully maybe my mom can drive more so I can read. But it's okay so far, but I'll keep updating you guys. Okay, hello guys, it is a couple days later, and I am back home from our trip to see my grandparents, and I am a little bit under the weather yesterday and today, but I have been working all day feeling sick, and that hasn't been very fun. But I am on page 202, so I wanted to give a little update in reading Billy Summers by Stephen King. And I am enjoying it more than I think my last update. I had kind of just started it, but I wasn't really into it. I'm enjoying it more, but still I'm not super captivated by the storyline and honestly how it is written. Maybe it's because I haven't read any Stephen King before, and I don't know, I'm just used to different writing styles. But I don't know, something about it is a little bit boring. but I am gonna finish it, and I do want to know what happens, and it's not horrible at all by any means, but I guess I just thought I would be way more into it than I am, and that maybe because I'm so used to like really fast-paced thrillers, and so maybe I need to kind of break that cycle of me reading those into reading a little bit more thicker, more in-depth, slow burn thrillers. But I feel like the point of a thriller is supposed to be like really fast-paced, grab you from the beginning. I just don't feel like this has done that, at least for like my reading style at the current moment. Maybe I'll become more mature with my reading style, but as of right now, that's pretty much the update. Yeah, on page 202 of like over 500, so I still have quite a bit, and this is gonna be more than a week of reading thrillers because this is a pretty big book and it's taken me a little bit longer to read than I was anticipating. But yeah, a little bit more than a week. I'm just gonna read now for the rest of the day and just hang out and take it chill because I am not feeling too hot. Okay, I don't know why I look so red on the camera, but it's a couple days later. I'm feeling a lot better, and I was able to finish Billy Summers by Stephen King, and I have a couple things to say about this book. I ended up giving this a 2 stars. I think I would do 2 or 2.5 stars. It was just really long and really slow, especially for like the first third or first half of the book. It was like really slow, and then finally we kind of got the plot picking up, you know, the main point picking up where he is now doing his final job, actually conducting finally his final job. But then like the story totally turns into a whole nother plot line with another really main character, and I did end up liking her, but at the same time I feel like Stephen King just wrote her in a way that didn't really sit well with me because of some things that she had gone through, but then also her character development through that just wasn't really realistic and honestly wasn't very respectful, I feel like, to what she had gone through. So overall, I didn't really enjoy this book, and I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone because I do feel like there was some things within this book that did not sit right with me, and it just kept like alluding to stuff that I feel like was just a little wonky, even though, I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me, some of it. But some parts were a little bit more fast-paced, were interesting. I didn't mind Stephen King's writing. Like I said, this was my first book by him, so I didn't mind his writing. It was honestly just kind of the plot and how he put it together. Yeah, this was over 500 pages, so I feel like it took me a while to get through. Like, we are definitely over a week now in my reading thrillers for a week. I am gonna do one more book, so it's really gonna be more than a week, but we're just gonna call it a week. If any of y'all have read that book, message me or something because I want to know how you felt about it. I know I read that book because Haley Pham really suggested. She gave it 5 stars. She loved that book, and I usually kind of have similar style to the kind of books she likes, but that one just, I was really disappointed. So the next book that I was going to read for this video is Misery by Stephen King, and I do feel like that I will like this a lot better, especially because this was like older Stephen King. This, I think, was written only a couple years ago. So this one, I think, was written, I believe, in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. I know they made it into a movie. Okay, 1987. I figured it was 80s or 90s. So I do feel like I will maybe get to see some of Stephen King's older kind of writings and his older kind of plots, and I have seen parts of this movie and I did like it. This one I think is going to be a little bit more gruesome, a little bit more gory, a little bit more dabbling into the horror, even though I think that this is strictly just a thriller. But with that being said, with how long it took me to read this one, and this one is definitely shorter, I think that this one is, yeah, it's like 350 pages, so it's a lot shorter, but I need a break from Stephen King because that one just put me in a lull. So I think the next book that I'm gonna read, and the last book that I'm gonna read for this video, is The Woman in the Library by Sulari Gentill. I'm sorry if I'm like really not saying that right, but I love this cover so much. I've had this book for a little while now, but it has been literally on my Goodreads like want to read TBR for the longest time. It may have been like one of the first books I put on my Goodreads that I wanted to read, and I'm finally gonna read it. And it is a little bit of a shorter book. I think it's around 250 pages, so I feel like I should be able to get through this within a couple days or so. And get closer to that week time frame, and I am excited to read this because, like I said, I've been wanting to read it forever. one of my favorite covers in my collection. So the back of it says, the ornate reading room at the Boston Public Library is quiet until the tranquility is shattered by a woman's terrified scream. Security guards take charge immediately, instructing everyone inside to stay put until the threat is identified and contained. While they wait for the all clear, 4 strangers who would happen to sit at the same table pass the time in conversation and friendships are struck. Each has his or her own reasons for being in the reading room that morning. It just happens that one is a murderer. So I feel like this is going to be a good little mystery to uncover, and has to do with books, has to do with the library, so I feel like it's going to be interesting. I am going to start some work for the day because I spent all morning trying to finish this dang book, so I'm going to get to this book a little bit later today, but this will be my next read and I'm excited, and hopefully this is a little bit of a higher rating book for me than Billy Summers. I have started The Woman in the Library. I actually started yesterday while I was at the gym, while I was walking, and then I read a little bit more last night, and I'm about to read again some more today, but I'm on page 88, and I thought that I would kind of give you guys a little update of kind of how I'm liking it. And I am liking this book. It's very interesting the way it is written. So basically, like within the first chapter, most of the first chapter is the story happening, and then like at the very end of each chapter, it's like a letter written by someone who, like another author who is critiquing what was just written and what you just read. So it's like a really interesting concept, and the story, the actual like plot, is moving pretty quickly, which generally I like, but I feel like something's happening a little bit too quickly, like within the main characters and how they're forming relationships. Like, I don't really see that being very realistic, so that is like kind of off, but I am enjoying this a lot more than Billy Summers already, and it is pretty short, so I'm excited to read a bit more and hopefully maybe finish tomorrow. But yeah, I love this cover so much, and I really like the book so far, so we will see how it goes. And I have like kind of an idea of who I think the like killer was, but at the same time, with each chapter having like this person critiquing the writing, I'm like, is this even really happening? Is she writing a story about what happened to her, or is she writing a whole fictional story and then they're critiquing that? I don't know. It's kind of like confusing a little bit, but also super interesting. So I'm just gonna sit outside for a little bit and hopefully get quite a bit of reading done before Mike gets home, and we're gonna go play pickleball for the first time. Okay guys, so I have finished The Woman in the Library, and this one was a pretty quick read because it was pretty small. And I was, again, a little bit disappointed by this book because, like I said, I've been wanting to read this for such a long time. I really loved the concept of this book. But sadly, a very small amount of this book is actually in the Boston Public Library, where that woman screamed really loudly. And I kind of thought most of the book was going to be, you know, within the library and within that reading room, and maybe them even being stuck in the reading room and figuring out who's the murderer. But it pretty much had very little to do with that, and so I was a little bit disappointed in that. The writing style was pretty interesting. I think I had mentioned that, like, in one chapter it will be the story, and then at the end of the chapter it is like a letter being written to the author who is writing the story, but not her, but like who's writing the story within the story and like critiquing the story. And then like that person started to become the person writing the letter also was in the story. It sounds confusing, but it was interesting. Like, I would, if someone was interested in this, say go ahead and read it. But I do feel like maybe because it was such a short novel, it was like 250 pages, that it moved quickly in the sense of, you know, I don't know, like either character development or plot was a little bit too quick, which is weird to say in a thriller. But I feel like I couldn't connect with the characters, and they got together really fast. They became friends really fast, and everyone was a little sus, even though there was really only one killer, and I could kind of see it coming. You can kind of see it. So I don't know. The ending was very interesting. I don't really know like what else to say about it without giving too much away, but I gave this like a 2 stars. I think I would maybe give like a 2 or 2.5 stars because I want to say I did enjoy it a bit more than Billy Summers, and I gave that one a 2 stars. So within this week time frame, it was really a little bit more than that, but I was able to read 3 thriller books, and I'm just going to kind of recap them and give you my final ratings because I feel like sometimes you need a little bit of time with your ratings. Sometimes mine change over time, but the first one I read, which was the best one out of these 3 by far, was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacy Willing. What the heck? So the first one that I read and was by far the best is A Flicker in the Dark by Stacy. Why is it getting darker? So the first book that I read during this week of thrillers and was definitely the best one was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham, and I very much suggest this one. I say I want to give this a solid 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. A great thriller, makes you want to turn the page, figure it out. I definitely suggest this one, and I feel like the imagery was very good throughout this book. Like I felt like I was there with the main character. The second book, of course, was Billy Summers by Stephen King, and I was disappointed in this one. I gave this one 2 stars. It felt very drug out. Also, within the main female character of the book, I feel like they could have done something a lot more different with her and gave her a lot more credit. I don't know. I feel like they didn't handle her very well in her character development, like within the story. It just wasn't very realistic, and honestly I think it's because a male wrote it that I just feel like what she went through no one can really understand unless you're female in that specific situation. So I don't know. That was a big disappointment with me of Stephen King. I do want to read more Stephen King. I am very excited to read Misery by Stephen King, and I am going to and read more of his books. I did do research after reading Billy Summers of that book, and a lot of people felt like I did, and I felt a little bit validated because at first I was like, why am I feeling this way about a Stephen King book? But a lot of people were saying it was one of his worst ones and it was really slow. So I'm glad I wasn't the only one who felt that way. So I don't suggest that one to read as a Stephen King book, especially if it's one of your first ones. Maybe read more of his more popular ones, I guess. Like I would suggest this one, even though I haven't read this one, but I know that I'm gonna like this one, so I definitely suggest maybe trying that one out. And the last book is The Woman in the Library, and yeah, you heard me just talk about this one, so you know how I feel about it. Well, that is all the books that I read in this reading thrillers for a week with me. It was really fun to do like reading with me for a week. I want to do more, maybe like reading romance for a week, reading fantasy for a week. I just think that that is a really fun way to kind of group it together, and you can see what books I am currently reading within that week. Let me know if you guys want to see more videos like this, and if there's any other genres that you would like me to dabble into, or if there is specific books that you would love to see reading vlogs about or other videos about. Let me know down in the comments. I love to chat, and thank you for stopping by my channel, and I hope to see you guys soon.